Rick Mishkin has praised Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke as having, quote, tremendous courage throughout this economic crisis. For more on what the former Fed governor thinks of Mr. Bernanke and of his speech this morning, let's go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Bloomberg's economics editor Kathleen Hayes is standing by with the Columbia University professor. Kathleen, good afternoon.
Thank you so very much, Mark. And of course, we're very happy to be joined by Rick Mishkin. Rick, you know, so much about what Jackson Hole is. It isn't just the papers inside. It's the milieu. It's the environment that this symposium, now in its 33rd year, occurs in. But let's start with the economy, what the Fed chairman said about that today, because the market seized on just a couple of sentences, which seemed to build a little bit on the Fed's last statement, saying, yeah, things are starting to turn. Near-term prospects for growth are good. How important is that?
Well, it's important. I think it's sort of obvious. We've had some better numbers coming in. There's been tremendous improvement in the financial markets in terms of credit spreads. So having an economy that looks like it's on the base of recovery is now becoming more and more clear. On the other hand, there really, to me, was not that much new here. We still have a long way to go. We still have a very impaired financial system that we have, as a result, very strong headwinds in the economy. Even if there's a recovery, it's not clear that it'll be very strong. And what we also know is that the unemployment is always something that lags. So, in fact, we're still in a situation where we're going to be very high unemployment for a long period of time. So people should not ignore the fact that it's not rosy yet, and far, far from it.
Well, and one of the things on that line in particular the Fed chairman mentioned was tight credit. Banks still face losses. The financial headwinds really seem to be what he focused on today.
Yeah, and I think that this is very clear. And also, there are other things that are still of great concern. For example, that the fact that we do not have a sense that there's going to be fiscal responsibility in the long run is something that should weigh on people. Taxes have gone up. In fact, in New York State, taxes have gone up. If you, in fact, know that there are going to be these huge deficits going forward, higher tax in the future may actually constrain spending today. So there's some real serious issues out there that we have to worry about.
What about Fed independence? We're waiting to see if the president reappoints Ben Bernanke for another term. A lot of talk about the Fed having trouble exiting from credit creation because of potential political pressure. What do you see there?
So actually, probably one of the things that concerns me most about the long run is the potential for weakened Fed independence. There's a lot of hostility to the Federal Reserve in Congress. I testified recently in Congress, and it was just palpable. So the problem here is that what we have learned, both from theory, economic theory, but also from experience, is having strong independent central banks is actually very beneficial to the health of the economy and helps keep inflation under control. This is particularly critical right now at this juncture because the Federal Reserve, I think, did exactly what it had to do in terms of being very aggressive in terms of easing, and also these new credit programs to deal with the impaired credit markets. But in fact, that has to be reined back. And in order to make sure that inflation does not spin out of control, you have to have a Federal Reserve that can do its job. If that's severely hampered, it could be a real problem. To give you an example, there's a bill that Ron Paul has proposed, and Ron Paul is not considered a mainstream person, and yet he had 250 co-sponsors, and this is basically an attack on the Federal Reserve. That's scary. The markets are scared about it. It's amazing, given how much slack there is in the economy, how much discussion there is in the markets, that we're worried about inflation.
So is that the biggest challenge that Ben Bernanke will face if he's reappointed in his next 4 years?
It's one of the huge challenges he's going to face, which is the political economy. Think about when you have to start reining back in these credit programs. So at some point, the Fed is going to have to get out of the MBS market. Think about how the realtors are going to complain, the home builders are going to complain, and so forth. And if that's not done at the point when it's needed, which I don't think is soon, but if it's not done at the point it was needed, we could go back to the 70s. And nobody wants that. That was a bad period. We had a tremendous improvement in the quality of economic policy and the way the economy operated after the 1980s. And we don't want to go back to the bad old days. That would be terrible.
And that would be terrible for Ben Bernanke's legacy. You've known Ben Bernanke for a long time. You're both academics. You've worked on books.
I've known him since a graduate. I've known the man over 30 years.
Okay, so you tell me, because I've heard a lot of serious Fed watchers doubt if Ben Bernanke is a Fed chairman who can stand up to that political pressure.
Absolutely, he can. This is a guy who is, first of all, very cool, calm, and collected. He'll do whatever it needed to be done to actually prevent a depression, and he'll do whatever it needs to be done in terms of preventing inflation as long as he has the tools to do it.
Okay. Rick Mishkin, thank you so much for joining us, giving us the tools we need to analyze Jackson Hole. Thanks so much. Mark Crumpton, going to send it back to you. I'll be back in about an hour for more from Jackson Hole, the Kansas City Fed's annual symposium.
Kathleen Hayes joining us from Jackson Hole. Kathleen, thanks.